So welcome to Caritas Consciousness Project. I'm Gloria Coelho, and Caritas is dedicated to promoting the evolution of consciousness as the key to individual growth and global healing. We do this through online interviews and presentations by guest speakers such as tonight. Also have classes and study groups that we do. And we draw from a wide assortment of both ancient wisdom and leading edge studies in science, consciousness, spirituality, and philosophy. And we've been doing this for just about 19 years. But in 2019, we started recording our presentations, which was a good thing since pandemic forced us to go all virtual. So we were ready. And our video recordings are viewable either through our website, which is caritascenter.org, or, and I should say, on our YouTube channel, which is Caritas Consciousness Project. We have a lot of wonderful presentations, and the YouTube channel, they're all free, so you can watch any of the ones that are on there. As a nonprofit organization, we do rely on the support of our members and donors to keep us going. So if you enjoy our presentations and would like to support this program, you can make a donation or become a member on our website. And now let me introduce our guest speaker tonight. Dr. Ed Tick has been a thought leader in healing war and violent trauma for over 40 years. Ed restores ancient and worldwide spiritual teachings and practices for war healing and warrior return in our modern world. He's an archetypal psychotherapist, author, poet, educator, international journey leader, and peace activist. He has formulated and practices community and spiritually based healing of violent and military trauma with a transformational and holistic approach. His work is presented in his groundbreaking book, War and the Soul, and I have a copy right here to show you. It's a really fascinating, thought-provoking book, and 5 other books that he's written. As part of his work, Ed has guided annual pilgrimages to Vietnam since 2000. Ed's presentation premieres his newly published 7th book, Coming Home in Viet Nam, a 20-year collection of his poetry documenting immersion in Vietnamese culture for war healing and reconciliation. So most welcome, Ed, and I will let you take over now. And thank you so much for making time to be with us tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Gloria, for inviting me and for hosting this forum for so long. I am utterly with you, and everybody here is, in our labor to raise consciousness for each other and for our communities and for the world. And that may be the most important and desperate call we have today, that we need an awakening of world consciousness to steer us through these very challenging apocalyptic times we're in. So your work and this kind of sharing and us being in it together is very, very important. So thank you for having me. More importantly, thank you for the service that you've been giving for 2 decades. And,
thank you.
And to all of us.
It's been my privilege, really.
Good. So good evening, everybody. Really happy to see you all. Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, I know a lot of you, and I'm really happy to see you. Some of us have been together on other missions. We have a lot of veterans right here. So, well, tonight's program is on healing from war and extreme violence. And I will talk a little bit about the horrors and damage of war and how extensive that is, but many of you know that. All of us should know it. Mostly we will be in the holistic and cultural and spiritual healing practices that really can bring our warriors home. So I will switch to PowerPoint in a little while and have much to share with you, but I wanted to see you all first, and I want us to be at least a bit of a community as much as we can, since we're scattered all over the world. So to begin, all this work, healing work, war healing work, is sacred and of utmost importance. So to begin, I'm going to light a candle for us, for world peace, for world healing, for all you veterans and survivors who are here and all over the world, to be well. May this light come back in your hearts and souls and come home to us. Come all the way home to us. We need you and you need us, and we have to be in this together. So my little candle holder is in the shape of a butterfly, and I just want to share with you why. The word for butterfly in ancient Greek is psyche, the same as psyche. So we are together working to light the invisible spiritual flame that is psyche in each of us and all of us. So psyche will be burning up here on my altar for us while we speak. And then secondly, I have very much to share about war healing and homecoming, and many of you are in that work yourself with using some similar or different strategies. Tonight, I will focus on my return journeys to Vietnam, and I'll give away part of the punchline of the evening now. Unlike our country, where we have post-traumatic stress disorder and moral injury in epic proportions, epidemics, there's really no chronic wartime PTSD in Vietnam. They don't have it. And Western science would say this is impossible. Anybody through such severe traumas would have broken brain and all kinds of inner negative transformations that would make PTSD inevitable. But in fact, the Vietnamese do not have it. They do have PTSD from some other conditions. So it's not that it doesn't exist in there or in humanity, but they have such extensive spiritual and holistically based healing practices that have been part of their culture for literally thousands of years, that they respond utterly differently to traumatic events, and they responded quite profoundly differently to the American war there. So we will be spending a lot of time. I will give you a miniature cultural immersion in Vietnam during this talk to show you the practices they have that we use together with them when our veterans and civilians go over there, that can profoundly contribute to the reduction and the elimination of severe trauma. So in the Vietnamese way, in addition to the candle, Vietnamese always light incense, and especially when we're praying and when we're gathering in community and we're calling the sacred. The way our Native American brothers and sisters use tobacco, the way the Orthodox Church uses incense in their churches, the Vietnamese use incense at their pagodas and their altars and everywhere. And it works the same way. The smoke is pleasing to the spirits and creates a bit of an altered ecology for us and reminds us we're in sacred time and space. So the candle and the incense will be burning as we explore war healing together with each other, with the Vietnamese. Before I go to PowerPoint, well, let's do this very quickly. We are a smallish group, so, and I know and love some of you. I love all of you universally, but I know and work with some of you. Lawrence and I have been into Vietnam together. Others, I have really special connections. So I know some vets are here, and I want you all to feel welcome and honored, and for us to be a little community. So let's just very briefly go around the circle and just give your name and what your status is. Are you a veteran? Are you a civilian? and welcome home, everybody.
You'll have to unmute to do that.
Shall I call people's name? Because I don't know what order.
Yeah, I think, people have different order.
Okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm calling you in the order you are on my screen. So if we're in kindergarten and didn't want to sit in the front of the room, sorry, here we are. And Brother Sean, you're first on my screen.
Good evening. I'm originally from Greater Manchester, England. I'm a veteran. I served in the Royal Air Force, and I also served in the Career Fire Service, both in the UK and the US. And I've had the privilege to be on Dr. Ed Tick's retreats and notice the healing benefits that have gone on in the retreats. And I'm so grateful to be on this event this evening. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you, Sean. And Patty, old friend, great to see you.
I'm Patty France. I'm a veteran. I met Ed in 2007, known him since then, up at Wheaton, Illinois. And what else? What else you want to know? I forgot. Short-term memory. But I know Ed. I've known Ed and Kate for a long time, and I'm totally retired. I don't work anymore. I was a social worker, so I'm burned out. So glad to be here. Glad to see you two again.
Glad to see you too. I got tears in my eyes. I want you all to know that Patty willingly went to Iraq as a social worker to serve our troops and help our wounded. So thank you and bless you, Pat.
Wow.
She's a social worker in the hardest places to do it and to be it.
And now I have a bunch of tattoos because I don't have to work anymore.
Thank you. Lawrence, you're up.
I'm Lawrence Markworth, Vietnam veteran. I met Ed in 2016. I wish I would have met him in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or whatever. Yeah. But, it's never too late. And I think the single most healing thing that Ed and I have done together is the return trip to Vietnam. It was just amazing. And we can get into some details later, but it was mind-boggling and life-changing. Thank you, Ed.
So welcome, my brother. So welcome. Robert?
Robert Pullen. I'm an Army veteran, Vietnam, 69 and 70. Dr. Tick, I started using your material through our local vet center about 10 years ago. And it's well respected, and is used quite often in our group meetings.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. And thanks for the pig.
Okay.
I'll tell everybody about that later. Thank you.
Okay.
They are thriving. Okay. Forgive me for not being able to pronounce your name well. Petronella?
Yes, that's me. I'm a Montessori teacher, and my belated husband was a Vietnam veteran. My oldest son, he's an Iraqi veteran. And this is more a personal interest for me to learn to deal with my oldest son. I keep loving him, but I see a lot of signs of trauma. He does get counseling, but many times I look at him and I see lots of, I don't know, I see something in his eyes. He's not right. But I don't criticize him. I just keep loving him, helping with his kids. And then I came across this title and I go like, wow, I think I can learn something. And I wish I had known about you when my husband was alive. He was very silent. He never talked about what happened in Vietnam until his son was wounded in Iraq. Then all of a sudden he became a proud veteran. So I wish I had known about you earlier.
Thank you for your story and for your family's service and sacrifices. And I hope, sorry about your husband, and we hope that we can get help and support and guidance for your son. And for you, you are a wife and a mother of war veterans. That's a profound identity that you carry yourself. So we want love and support and healing for you as well as for your family.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Chuck, you're up.
Hi, I'm Chuck Blocker. I'm a U.S. Air Force Cold War non-combat veteran who met Ed a couple of years ago, I think, though sometimes I think it's a lot longer and a lot less, so time has no real meaning. But Ed was the one that really got me to see that even though I'm a non-combat veteran, that my moral injury is important, pertinent, and in doing so kicked my butt into developing a moral injury exploration model. So love you, Ed, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Chuck. Love back at ya. I'm going to mess your name up as well. I apologize, Khwaja Adishjan.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Khwaja Arishan. You can call me Arish. Yeah, my home country is India, and I'm a student here in Duluth, Minnesota, pursuing Masters of Liberal Arts. And my area of interest is Kashmir, a conflicted territory between India, Pakistan, and China.
Oh.
It's a lot of requirements of healing and trauma and a lot of things. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, and bless you and bless your home. It's been torn by violent trauma for millennia.
Yeah.
And we're all concerned. We don't even think enough about that. I will talk a bit about the degree to which war trauma is transgenerational and historical. We're not only dealing with our own wars, we're dealing with everything that we've inherited through national and world history. We all live together in a 5,000-year-old history of constant transgenerational warfare, and we need to heal the planet and all of human consciousness.
True, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Chuck, you're glad to see you. Welcome.
I'm Charles Collins. I'm a medically retired Army veteran, Army infantry veteran of 14 years. I had 4 deployments: Kosovo, Iraq twice, Afghanistan once. I have been working with Dr. Tick since the beginning of the year. So I've been working with Freedom Alliance, who linked me up with Dr. Tick, who has done great things and helped me out quite a bit. I just recently did a retreat to Montana with him, and it has done me well. I've been suffering from PTSD and moral injury for quite a few years, and I think I'm taking steps in the right direction. So I'm glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm trying to learn. So
thank you, Chuck. You're learning and growing and coming home. Stay on the path. Joanne.
Hi. I am a civilian, but and I live in Wisconsin. My dad, however, was a World War II vet, and I really didn't. I've always felt like an interest and in Vietnam and studying that, and I realized when I was reading 30 Days with My Father that that PTSD is passed down. And so it really was eye-opening to me, and it made me want to, do some more stuff with, because she studied with you. So anyway, that's my story so far.
So far, yes, and it's an ongoing story. And welcome, and you two are witnessing for all of us how traumas pass through the generations, and we all get it. Some of us may remember that the Bible reads, "The sins of the parents shall be visited upon the children unto the third and fourth generations." The Bible is even warning us about transgenerational trauma. The only thing they got wrong is it's not the third and fourth generation, it'd be the 30th and 40th generation, and it will go on and on and on until we all heal it together. But it's true, it's real, we all have it, and it goes through the generations until we really get together and do deep healing. So glad you're here and open to that part of your own story. Keep going. Okay, Manny.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Tig, I'm not sure how long I've known you, but I'm going to guess 3 years. Searching, I found your books. We had conversations. Then you recommended the books, and I've been in these virtual gatherings since. Very, very helpful. I'm a civilian in this lifetime. Therapist for 25 years, the last 13 in the VA system as a clinical social worker. Half of that started in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and then now where I'm at is Orlando, Florida. I say in this lifetime because the most vivid dream I've had in my 55 years is of me dying in the Vietnam jungle at night, around, surrounded by my comrades, and it was like leaving my body and looking back. Mm-hmm. And it's I've done a lot of soul searching and searching in my dreams, past life regressions, and I'm pretty convinced that was me, that I was there. And so transgenerational trauma, I was actually thinking about that about 5 minutes before you brought it up. I'm like, am I going to use that word? But yeah, I'm convinced. And so my mission continues in this lifetime. And I love what I do. I'm burned out. The pandemic really kicked my rear, but I'm not quitting. I'm still standing, as Elton John would sing. And it's a pleasure and an honor to catch up with you. I'm at a truck stop. I made it.
Thank you.
So if you see cars passing, that's it. So when I turn off the camera, because it's time to go. But I'll be connected. I'll be just listening.
You will. No problemo, Manny. Glad you're here. Yeah, glad you're here. Thank you. Okay. For Beth Marie and Colleen, very happy to see you. Everybody is very briefly introducing themselves so we can be more community before I jump into the presentation. So we're almost through. And bless you, Beth Marie. I'm so happy to see you. So Kate, you're next. Can you unmute and introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I couldn't get my virtual background to stay virtual. So anyway, it's really good to see you all. Many of you know me. I think there's some who do not. Hi, Beth Marie. It's been forever, ever. It's good to see you. And Melanie, other folks that are here, Chuck, nice to see you again. Hi, Lawrence. Anybody I'm missing? I'm sorry, obviously, Chuck. Patty, hi, Patty. So nice to see you. All right. Anyway, well, I've been doing this work for a long time with Ed, and obviously we ran Soldier's Heart together and developed the Soldier's Heart model, which many of you are learning about now, about the return journey from war. And we did that together, and we just met so many wonderful veterans and their spouses and their helpers. So that's where I come from. I'm a psychotherapist and we live in central Massachusetts.
Thank you. Beth Marie, can you unmute and briefly introduce?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
You are.
My name's Beth Marie Murphy, and I live in the beautiful province of British Columbia in Canada. And my big news is I am no longer an American citizen.
Oh, wow.
Renounced my citizenship. So anyhow, I served in Vietnam in 69 and 70. And I have worked with Ed and Kate for seems like a long time, yet it feels like a long time ago. Life continues. I have my challenges, and but my PTSD is when I'm not dealing with a hospital system that got me very ill. I'm doing okay. So I would love to see you guys sometime, but right now I'd love to go to Vietnam with you, but it's not happening right now. So thank you for doing this. I was thrilled to get the invitation.
You're so welcome. It's wonderful to be with you. Always. So thank you. Also, I just underlining that we have an international conference because we have 2 people from Canada tonight. That's great. And Colleen from Canada also.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being, sorry for being a bit late. I couldn't get my Zoom to work. I'm probably new to your group. It seems like many of you know each other. I contacted you, Ed, by email a little bit ago. I'm from Canada. I'm a psychologist here, and I am involved in healing work with people who have been maybe historically traumatized, whether that's the veterans in Canada or even more so the military in the Holy Land. So I had contacted you, Ed, and I'm going to get back to you, but my mother is passing away, so my mind is kind of not my own right now. I'm partly with her and partly here with you and partly in Israel. So I just will enjoy being part of your group and listening in. And I've read your books, Ed, so I'm learning lots. And I hope that I have something to share with the group too. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, you're very welcome, Colleen. I'm glad you're here. Of course, your mother comes first. Thank you for letting me know why our correspondence dropped off a bit, but no problem. You're doing what's right and what you should be doing. So bless you and bless your mother in the transition, and we'll be in touch. And Melanie's picture is up, but her camera's not working. So can you just talk to us and introduce yourself, Melanie?
Yes. Hi. Sorry, my camera's not working. Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie, and I am the daughter of a Navy veteran from Vietnam not from Vietnam, who was in the Vietnam War, who actually passed away a year ago this month. And my grandfather was also in the Air Corps of World War II, and my husband is a Marine, and my nephew is a new Marine. So, so grew up with military all around me and didn't really know how that affected me until I met Ed. Was very unconscious about that, and I met Ed in a very interesting way. I was leading a retreat to Greece for women and doing some research on where to go, and the universe had me connect to Ed, and we've been connected ever since, and traveled with him and Kate to Greece in 2019. So I went twice in 2019 with my group, and then I had to go back with Ed. and just really drawn to, Ed, your work. And I am a psychotherapist, and I also am a Buddhist teacher and a shamanic teacher, and work very spiritually and archetypally, and work a lot with trauma. So this work that you're doing, Ed, is really important on so many levels, not just for veterans, but other psychotherapists who really, I don't think, have much of a clue, I guess, on how to really heal the soul and to bring the soul home. And it's really what's needed for all of us. And I think war has touched all of us in some way, shape, or form. So I think the whole world needs a soul retrieval. So I do a lot of work, my own and my own healing, but I also teach and guide other people. I've been a therapist for almost 30 years. I was just counting the years. I was like, wow. So yeah, it's, my passion and my calling, and I'm just really grateful for the work that Ed has done, and Kate as well. And so thank you again.
You're so welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you too. Thank you, everybody. Okay, well, we're all here, and I hope we're a little bit more of a community, knowing and appreciating each other. We hear how everybody here has military and civilian trauma in their histories and in their backgrounds. Gloria, we didn't know this was going to be a reunion, but it is. So thank you very much for hosting this reunion. It's really extraordinary to be with all of you again. Old people, old friends and new friends and everybody. And one of the strange matters about our work is that when we open our hearts and souls to each other and to our traumatic histories, it actually not only can bring individual healing and transformation, but creates community and brings us all together. And we need to be together in community to heal trauma, not the terrible isolation and individualistic pathology diagnosis and treatment that our mainstream practices. So, okay, with all of that, I'm going to jump into my presentation. So I'm going to go to a PowerPoint, and then I hope I'll end at about an hour so we can be together again in community and do more talking and sharing. Okay? Everybody ready for this? Okay. Can everybody see it? Because I don't see anybody.
I see it.
Yeah, it's good.
Good. Okay. All right. Let me know if it's not. I'll stay with this for a while and share with you all, and then we'll get back together with each other. Okay. So here we are. Thank you again, Gloria, for hosting us this evening and for calling us all together. We do see how everybody who's arrived is carrying traumatic wounding from their own and their families and transgenerational history. So it's a very strange matter, but the deepest pains and suffering can bring us together to create the greatest love, as you see between one of our veterans and an Agent Orange disabled child. So as I shared with you, and many of you know, because we've shared the work together, I do have extensive ways for responding to war and violent trauma. They are all based in spirituality, in community. We could spend weeks together on this. So tonight will be a shorter presentation. And as I said, I will mostly be spending time teaching about Vietnam and the journeys back and the way we heal in Vietnam and how the Vietnamese have resisted the traumatic breakdown. It's not all my work and it's not all of the solution, but it contains the principles and practices that we all need for worldwide violent and trauma healing. So we'll be sharing not only Vietnam and our veteran stories, but the underlying psycho-spiritual cultural principles that can bring magnificent transformational healing from even the worst wounds. So I'm beginning with this invocation from the Book of Q. This is the Vietnamese, their epic poem. And Q is gentle woman from the countryside. This is not the Iliad and the Odyssey. This is the Vietnamese epic. But who is their epic hero? A simple woman from the countryside who sacrificed herself to save her family and experienced terrible victimization in many, many different forms. But through her own soul work, her own spirituality, her maintaining love, and from using the arts and great compassion, she made it through terrible traumas and and healed herself and then reunited with her family. And I think Q as a woman is representative of Vietnam as a nation. Women are highly honored there. It's unusual in modern world history for any nation to choose a woman as their epic hero and a non-violent, peace-loving woman. But the Vietnamese did that, and it really is characteristic of their culture, their people, their soul. So these words, you see the Vietnamese, Chu Tam Kia Moi Bong Ba Chu Dai, which translates as you see, words of love have 3 times the power as words of skill. I think everybody's here who's a therapist and a social worker and a dream tender and a chaplain knows this. We have our words and our work has to be full of love, and it's love, not skill and technique, that is the real healing force. The skills and the techniques and the tools, they're just tools to help us along the way, but we must lead and guide with love. So if I could reduce all of the work my colleagues and I have done and all of the complicated principles we have introduced into a single statement, this is it. What we need to achieve and practice is spirituality in community. War and trauma break our spirits, alienate our souls, destroy community. You see a picture from Vietnam that includes our veterans and theirs all as one together. You can't quite tell from the picture, but some of the veterans are Native Americans. Some of them are minority people from the U.S. And you see Vietnamese of all kinds represented. Caritas, Gloria's community and program, is a beautiful old Latin word. We probably all know this, but it means love and compassion. Overwhelming, flooding each other with love and compassion. It's not selfish love, it's the generous, pour it on other people and pour it out to the world kind of love. So we use Caritas in this healing practice, and we use it when we meet former foes, and we use it to overcome the broken relations between the veteran community and the civilian community. Love and compassion is needed everywhere. So I have some of our practices listed there. And I'm not going to take a long time going through these, but we have to get it. When we ask our warriors what they want from us, what they usually answer, I just want you to get it. I want people to really get me, to understand me, my world, my life from the inside. So we need to get it. You will see how we practice cultural immersion in Vietnam, but it's not only there. Veterans and civilians live in different thought worlds and inner worlds. And so cultural immersion is also crossing the boundary and immersing ourselves in the veteran world or the civilian world or the Vietnamese world or wherever we go to really learn who other people are and drench ourselves in their being. I wasn't in the military, but I have been immersed with my sister and brother warriors for over 45 years now. And I'm part of that culture, even though I'm not officially a veteran. And I'm quite honored. It's been the great privilege of my life to serve you all, my brothers and sisters. So we witness each other's stories. We don't hide them. We identify, I'll talk more about that. We identify with each other's stories, and we see that your story and my story are actually the same. They're 2 parts of the same story, and we went through very, very similar experiences. And if we open to that, we see, in fact, People on opposite sides of the rifle are really the same people. The rifle is what separates them. Get rid of the rifle and work with the human identification. We need to grieve together. We're all loaded with millennia of grief and pain. And so we need to open to our grief and share it and witness each other's and release it. And when we can do that, we can work our way into forgiveness, understanding and forgiveness of the other and of ourselves, and do atonement practices. It's not enough just to grieve, and not even enough to forgive. Beyond forgiveness is atonement. The word atonement is actually of English roots. Most of our language comes from other languages, but atonement means what it looks like: at one-ment. We are putting the world that we harmed and broken to pieces back together through atonement practices. And we do that extensively in Vietnam and in other services, and we'll talk more about that. Some of you have given generously to our charity projects in Vietnam. So that heals us as we help heal the remaining war wounds in Vietnam. And finally, we reconcile, as you see in the picture, and we all become one people again and together. So I'm going to go through this really quickly because most of us know most of this, and we don't need to stay in the pain. We need to be in the healing of it. But we all affirm that war has been with us for millennia. And every religion in the Western tradition, so this is the Judeo-Christian, the Greek, the Norse traditions, all teach that war comes from the divine. War was a tool for the divine, meant to unfold the divine's purposes down here on earth. So war has profound religious roots, and we can't separate it. And of course, we all know that so many of our wars have been religious wars. So religion contributes to and causes war, and is actually in the root of war making. In world history, there have been more than 14,000 wars. These are wars where somebody could say they won. There have been another, I don't know how many thousands of wars that did not have definite outcomes. But 14,000 wars in 5,000 years of history, that's 3 wars a year all over the world, folks. And they lasted for many, many years and caused horrible devastation. So we've all inherited that. And our country too, the United States. Canada, our Canadian friends, you're not quite in this category. But Beth Marie was American, and after Vietnam went to Canada for good reasons. So US history, 225 years we've been at war. We only learn about the big wars. We don't know that we've been militarized and in some form of violent combat and conflict for almost our entire history, and that US war history began before the United States was even a country. It began with colonization here. King Philip's War in 1619, I think, was really our first US war, and every war has followed the same pattern since. So we are a country that has been made by war. And our great mythologist Joseph Campbell observes this: we have all been bred to one of the most brutal war mythologies of all times. We're conditioned to war, and we have so much profound healing we have to do to overcome it. Also, this will also be short, but you see, these are just a few of the many names that the invisible traumatic wound has had. We all know that PTSD is a relatively new name, invented in 1980. Since then, some people have dropped the D in Canada, and some of our forces call it operational stress. But just run your eyes quickly over this list. These are just some of the more than 80 names that we know that the traumatic wound has had since ancient times. And I'm just going to call our attention to the bottom 3 quickly. Our Native American brothers and sisters knew of this wound also. The Lakota, the Sioux people, called it Nahinapeapi. It's a spiritual wound. That means in Lakota, the spirits left. So a warrior was somebody who was emptied of spirit, and healing was to restore the warrior's spirit. The word trauma actually comes from ancient Greece, trauma, and it meant a piercing or stabbing wound to any part of us, body, mind, heart, soul. And ancient Greece also had profound rituals for healing trauma. I have a book coming out on that in January. We'll be back to share that. And the Bible, PTSD is rampant in the Bible. If some of you read my book, Warriors Return, I have case studies of our two religious tribal warrior kings. That's King Saul and King David. The first two kings of the Judeo-Christian tradition were warrior kings, both of whom had severe PTSD. And I have case studies or soul histories of them and their PTSD in that book, in Warriors Return. The Bible reads about Saul's PTSD exactly this: the Spirit of God left him, and an evil spirit sent by the Lord entered him. And then he did everything that anybody with PTSD does. Rages, turns against loved ones, is violent toward friends and family members, distorts reality, becomes excessively violent toward anybody who offends him. It's in the Bible. So we have testimony from ancient times to the present of the ubiquity of the invisible wound and the terrible harm it does if we don't stop it and heal together. Whoops. Also, we need to recognize this. All our veterans here know this. If we don't give our warriors what they need upon homecoming, this is what we get. Homecoming itself is a source of trauma. And it can be even a more severe source of trauma, because we expect our people who sent us to war to be there for us when we come home and take care of us and tend us and give us everything we need. And it doesn't happen. So homecoming is a source of trauma. And what all of you and I have been doing together is trying to correct this and give our veterans the proper homecoming, healing, and welcome and services and support they need. It doesn't matter how long, well, it does matter. It should be right away, but let's do it when we can and as soon as we can, no matter how long ago the trauma was. So again, I'm not going to go through this. I'm just showing us and reminding us all. All of these are trauma-related psychosocial issues. All of these exist in our trauma and veteran populations 2 or 3 times the rate of civilians. And all of these, at least in the United States, are in epidemic proportions throughout the society. That means to me that we are all, that the United States has post-traumatic stress disorder. Our politicians are talking about the soul of the nation and trying to save and heal that. Yeah, well, the soul of the United States has what we now call PTSD with all of these conditions, and not only in our veterans, but everywhere. So we need to realize how extensive it is, and that trauma itself might be the modern wound of our times and of the world that the whole world needs to finally face together. So with all of that, we will go into the deep healing. So as you know, and many of you have read it, my breakthrough book on this was called War in the Soul. And it is the cause, there's actually a quote from Shakespeare, from Othello. When Othello was a warrior, if you remember Shakespeare's play, and tragically he was seduced by his evil advisor, and he murdered his wife, whom he loved very much. When he saw himself going wrong, when he murdered his beloved and believed the lies, then he looked inside and was tortured and said, "It is the cause. It is the cause. My soul." PTSD and moral injury are primarily soul wounds. I translate PTSD, some of you know this from my books, as post-traumatic soul distress. It's our souls that are aching, and also post-traumatic social disorder, because we've all been torn apart and our society is in disorder from war practicing, from the alienation between veterans and civilians, from using 75 or 80% of our national resources on war making rather than taking care of ourselves and each other and the planet. So it is the cause. For those of you who read War in the Soul, you know the first chapter opens with the story of Art, who said, "My soul has fled." So you probably, most of you know the story, so I won't tell it now again. But I worked with Art way back in like 1988, 89, 90. He survived the siege of Khe Sanh. He was there the entire 4 months. And he taught me a great lesson because he was sitting in my office, and while we were sitting there was an empty chair next to us, and he said, "My soul's not in me. My soul is in this chair next to you, next to us, watching you to decide if it's going to trust you." He told me the story that he vividly remembered of how during first terrible bombardments and then a suicide attack in Vietnam, that he felt his soul leave his body and fly up the hill. It didn't detach. It saved his life. It pulled him up the hill, but it never climbed back inside. And our therapy work ended up getting his soul and his body, the rest of his being, to reunite. I'm going to tell you, Ron, the second quote about the most important spiritual experience of my life at the end. Please don't forget, because Ron also experienced soul loss in Vietnam combat. But it wasn't soul loss that destroyed him. It was learning that he had a soul, and that was the most important thing for him to tend for the rest of his life. Okay. Before we go here, I want to share a poem with you. So now I am going to be reading from my new book, Coming Home in Viet Nam. A few of you are in it, so you need to read it. But I'm going to open with a poem called Praying. And this is about soul restoration and how we do it. And you'll hear it's 2 stanzas. Most of my poems are written in first person by the person experiencing it. So some of these experiences are mine, but I also wrote as if I'm a veteran or as if I were a Vietnamese person. So it's a very, very personal. Now, praying, this is Praying, and it has 2 stanzas. The first one is what happened on this young man's 19th birthday in a firefight in Vietnam. And the second is what happened when we went back. I'll tell you briefly, the backstory is that this veteran in this firefight, he and his units survived a suicide charge. They killed 300 enemy soldiers, and they dug a mass grave, and they bulldozed the bodies into the grave and just covered it up. It haunted him for decades and decades, and he had dreams of the dead. He wanted to go back to find that grave and return it. And we did. So the first stanza is his battle when he lost his soul, and the second stanza is when we went back and returned the grave site and the bodies of the Vietnamese to their loved ones. So here we go, Praying. Never in my life did I pray so hard as that day at the smoking bottom of this mountain, among giant boulders and fallen trees, when the enemy overran our wire and sprouted like berserk rice stalks, no farther away than the length of my rifle, and our muzzle holes became God's wrathful eyes. That's the battle on his 19th birthday. We went back and were on the same mountain. Never in my life did I pray so hard until today, on the cloud-crowned top of this mountain, among smiling statues and wafting incense, when their children took my hands and called me uncle, and monks bowed to me as if I were a saint. And I embraced their dead as my true brothers, and God's loving eyes gazed through my torn and mending heart. We transform the traumatic wound from curse to blessing, from filled with hatred and fear and enmity to filled with love and kindness and compassion. From a broken, soul-destroying experience to an initiatory experience that's transformational and can teach us that we have souls and other people have souls, and we can be in this life together, tending each other's souls. And you hear that's what happened with this vet, Al. Not only that, but after this trip, he went back to Vietnam on his own again and again. And he fell in love with a Vietnamese woman, and he married her. And they live partly here and now partly in Vietnam. And they have healed the Vietnam War right in their love relationship. And Al, our vet, also has adopted the Vietnamese family and helps support them. So they live in two countries, and they put our two countries together. So this horror turned into great blessings for them and the generations to come. I'm just going to briefly mention some of my other books. Some of you know them and how they're relevant here. This book is a practice of dream healing. It's about the origins of psychotherapy and medicine in ancient Greece and the use of dreams for their healing. The first chapter tells about my own transformation when I went to Greece and I attended the Trojan women, the Greek tragedies about war from the ancient times. And at that time, I was just a psychotherapist for Vietnam veterans. That changed my life because it reminded me, it taught me that war is an archetype, that wars are always the same, their conditions are always the same, that this archetype moves through world history, and that my identity was transformed from a psychotherapist for Vietnam veterans to somebody who's, and my mira, that's a Greek word for fate and destiny. I was told, I was shown that my destiny is to serve as a war healer. And my identity transformation was, it's not just about me and our generation in Vietnam. This is about all warriors of all times and all places. So I was transformed from thinking of myself as a servant of Vietnam veterans to somebody with a lifelong devotion to war healing for everybody, everywhere. And some of you know Warriors Return. This takes the work much farther and expands on what is in Warriors Return. So it teaches about the initiation process, and what we call PTSD is interrupted initiation. We sent our warriors on the hero's journey and the heroine's journey down into hell, into the underworld, but we didn't bring them home. We have to complete the initiation and bring them all the way home. And we have to complete their hero and heroine's journey and bring them all the way home. And there really is a roadmap for coming home. And that's all in Warriors Return, including this understanding of PTSD. It is altered nervous system functioning and what's called broken brain now, but that's not all. Broken brain work is good for helping restore the nervous system, but it's all of these other wounds, and all of them need to be addressed in a meaningful way for healing to occur. And so my friends and colleagues and I and all of us together have been looking for the most holistic and comprehensive ways to do this. And now I will share more of what happens in Vietnam. Again, there are other ways, and we do it stateside also, and I also lead journeys to Greece where we do this soul work, but we're concentrating on the Vietnamese experience now. So, coming home in Vietnam. This is Tom Tien, and I wish you could meet him in person. Maybe some of you have, and maybe some of you will. But he was a Viet Cong veteran. He was left for dead on the battlefield. He has a miraculous story of survival. He is really the happiest person I've ever met in my life. because every minute of life is so precious to him. And when we go to Vietnam, we stay at a little retreat center in the Mekong Delta on a little island. It's very primitive, and it's always everybody's happiest place to be in Vietnam, because he is so extraordinarily loving, and we drench in Vietnamese people and culture. We meet the locals. We always have veteran groups with our veterans and theirs. And Tom Tien sings to us. So I'm going to offer you a song from Tom Tien and then read a poem.
Tờ bông cây âm thầm bên đường, tờ suối sâu âm thầm trong làng, ngàn thư xanh âm thầm phân sóng, bao mến thương rung động trong lòng. Nhớ cô hương sao, sao gieo tiếng đất lòng với bao ngàn năm. Vớt bước đi trên phiến đá mòn còn in dấu. Từ bông cây âm thầm bên đường, từ suối sâu âm thầm bên làng, ngàn thư xanh âm thầm vân sóng, bao mến thương rung động trong lòng. Nhớ cố hương sao xiến tất lòng với bao ngàn năm. Đất bước đi trên phiến đá mòn còn in dấu. Từ bông cây âm thầm bên đường, từ suối sâu âm thầm trong làng, ngàn thư xanh âm thầm vân sóng, bao mến thương rung động trong lòng.
Now, the song isn't only wonderful, but his laugh is wonderful. And he laughs like this endlessly. And it infects everybody, and we're all so happy and laughing when we're with him. This is a poem for Tom Tien, and it's called Flowers Blooming Inside the Enemy. And for those of you who were there, you may know, the Viet Cong called their people who fought in the underground tunnels and went through the tunnels and then came up on an American base. They called them flowers who bloom inside the enemy. And Tom Tien was one of these. So this is the name of the poem, and this is for him. And again, first stanza is then, second stanza is now. First stanza is the curse and the horror of war, and the second stanza is the transformation to love and blessing. This is addressed to him. It's not in first person. This is me and our veterans writing to Tom Tien. Once you were the flower that blossomed on my base. Your petals spit fire. Your leaves blazed hate. Your spider-webbed face taught me how to fear. But today, you are the flower that blossoms on this river. Your petals drip kindness. Your leaves caress mine. My lost years fade to nothing as you teach me again to love. And he does. He does. So we will now go through some of the reasons that Vietnam does not have the traumatic wound that we have in America. And again, it's not just about the difference between Vietnam and the US or about them fighting to protect their country while we invaded. It's about the profound philosophy and spirituality and way of life of the people that so permeates them that they really live differently than we do. And they have preventive and protective factors built in against the traumatic breakdown. So we begin with Buddhism, and Buddhism teaches all of these tenets. Life is suffering. Don't impose our wishes on reality. If you have to be at war and do it fully, but immediately afterwards be at peace. And war is tragic, but sometimes necessary. And always, 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 even in warfare, make good karma. And the Vietnamese really do say, we were your friends the day the war ended. They also kind of laughingly said, so we were your friends on May 1st, 1975. What took you so long to start coming back? And we chuckled together about that. And we all know that one of the principal teachings of Buddhism is karma, that we all have karma, but it's not just personal karma. Karma exists on all of these levels, Buddhism teaches us, and the Vietnamese believe this. The picture you see is some artwork about Agent Orange children. You see the name of the picture is Agent Orange Infection, I Go to School. Both these children are Agent Orange victims, and they're going to school. And they're not excluded. They're included everybody were in their culture, and they're smiling. They even accept the horrors of war and of Agent Orange and of its aftermath as karma. And from the historical and cosmic point of view, they say that the American war in Vietnam helped them heal their historical karma because of what they did to their Montagnard people, to their indigenous people, 3,000 years ago when they were pushed out of China. So karma goes all the way through history. And many people are saying our country, the United States, has a very difficult karma that it needs to work out. Here's another poem about Buddhism and karma. I was sitting in a pagoda garden in front of a great statue of Buddha, and a woman was praying next to me. And this is a poem about that. So this was in the Forest of Enlightenment pagoda. Sweet sutras dripping from her tongue, she sits before Buddha, cross-legged and sincere, while traffic squeals and children squawk. I light my incense stick and take my place before her bending form. Only then in this small banyan park do I see the raw flesh stretched thin, the crooked smile that crawls from where her ears should be to plunge beneath her plain and simple dress. I strain to keep my gaze on Buddha. She just bows and sings. I kowtow with my glowing incense, less to the calm Lord in marble than to this woman with the wounds of the world fried into her living flesh. You who have not been there would be truly amazed to an extraordinary degree to experience the Vietnamese people and find out how peacefully, lovingly, calmly they accept the terrible war wounds from our war, from the French war, from the Japanese war, from their war history, and what extraordinarily kind, loving, accepting people they are. We don't know how to do this. Much of the conflict in the United States is refusing to look at and own our collective and historical karma. No, 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 we can't, we shouldn't, we mustn't talk about it. Well, that's very wrong. We have to, and we have to be in it together, witnessing and admitting and grieving and forgiving together. And the Vietnamese do. Everybody, you see more Agent Orange victims, survivors here. Everybody has a place and a purpose and honorable status in Vietnam, including us and including our warriors, no matter what we did during the war. Vietnam is also a Confucian culture, and that teaches right social relations throughout all societies. So everybody has a place, everybody belongs. And this is a short poem written about this gentleman. On your left, you see, well, that is the Agent Orange Victims Band that performs for us sometimes in Saigon. The two gentlemen in the wheelchairs, well, everybody there is a full-grown adult. And the man in the wheelchair on your right is their lead singer. He can't speak, but he sings with the most beautiful voice. His name is Chung, and this is a little poem I wrote for him. I have a back disability, and I was on canes that year in Vietnam. So the first line is, this year I walk on 3 legs. So this is my home to Chon after meeting him and hearing him perform for us. This year I walk on 3 legs. Your legs are stumps and you cannot stand. My ears never stop ringing. You cannot hear. My eyes are cloudy and squinting. Your face is smooth and empty where eyes should be. I cannot speak your language, but you have none. Yet your voice, your song, the wind that blows through you resounds from your tiny twisted body like a great bronze prayer bell pealing dawn into our darkened world. Vietnam was what they call a people's war. We never understood that. We really didn't understand that the entire country understood itself to be at war with us. They just wanted their country back. So Confucianism and communalism are in their roots, and communism is an easy step to take from Confucianism and communalism when the West doesn't support you and let you in. Ho Chi Minh asked the West for his country's freedom because we were allies in World War II, and he was fighting the Japanese with us. But the United States gave the country back to France, and in fact, we paid 90% of the bill of the French War. So we didn't understand. The people just wanted their country back and to be free, and when we didn't give it to them, all the people were at war with us, and we were fighting everyone. So this picture, you see my dear wife who's with us tonight, Kate, and I are, this is in a northern village that the only visit they had ever had from Americans before this was the bombs we dropped on them. They were so happy and grateful that we came. And you see Kate's arms are on the shoulders of the woman in the center. We thought we were only coming to interview her. She was a pioneer woman. She was not a combatant. She worked on the Ho Chi Minh Trail carrying supplies down the trail. These people walked sometimes 6 months to a year carrying their bundle of rice or weapons or medical equipment down the trail to the south and then walked back 6 months. And that's how they spent the war. We came to interview this woman. The entire village showed up because everyone said, oh, you want to interview her? You have to interview me too, and me too, and me too, and me too, because her story is my story. We're all one. We're all the same. It's all of our story. We all did this. So please understand the People's War. Now, you didn't understand it then during the war, but we ask you and beg you to understand it now. So the unity of all people and the worship and the veneration of their ancestors. Sometimes their tradition is called ancestor worship, but the Vietnamese ask us to not say that because they don't worship their ancestors as if they were gods. They pray to them, to their souls who are, they experience as, going through the cycle of reincarnation and in the other world. And you see a gravesite with their water buffalo on your left, and our friend and guide song is at a family altar praying for the ancestors on your right. They believe that the ancestor soul stays around nearby for 4 generations, for 100 years, and we can talk to them, we visit with them, we help them, and they help us, and we pray for them to help them go on in their cycle of reincarnation. And when they can't, it's really tragic. Buddhism teaches we have to find the body and give it proper burial and practices. So the Vietnamese also have a practice. Gotta hold on. The Vietnamese also have a practice they call building windy tombs. A windy tomb is an empty tomb that is built for the soul of the person whose body can't be found. So if a person is MIA and the family finally gives up on trying to find the body and giving it a burial, they build an empty tomb, but it's a real full tomb with the person's name, and they go to the tomb and they pray there and they talk to the soul of their ancestor, and they invite it to be at home. And so there are many windy tombs around Vietnam, including 2 in our guide Song's family. And there's a poem about that in the book called Windy Tombs. However, we also use that practice on our journeys. And I'm going to cry, and it's good. I'm honoring my beloved sister, Beth Marie Murphy, who is here with us from Canada. She's the beautiful woman who said, "Hooray, I'm no longer an American citizen." After Vietnam, Beth Marie went to Canada, and she's been living there ever since. We've been to Vietnam together, and she also loves the Vietnamese and leads her own journeys there. So Beth Marie, you haven't read my book yet, so you haven't heard the poem that I wrote for you that's in my book, and I'm reading that now. It's a clumsy title called "The American War Nurse Builds a Windy Tomb." And the story of Beth Marie's beloved Vietnamese niece and building a windy tomb is in the poem. I did write it in first person as if I were you, Beth Marie, so forgive me. It's only because I love you so much. So, the American nurse builds a windy tomb. My back is bowed from the decades of carrying the soul of the legless girl who began as my patient, then became my niece, as we flew colored kites in the wind off my ship. Beth Marie's ship, by the way, was off Da Nang. It was the USS Sanctuary. It was one of our 2 hospital ships in Vietnam. And she served for a whole year on that ship, tending thousands and thousands of our wounded and the Vietnamese wounded. So back to the ship. Vietnamese Beth Marie. In dreams, my eyes are pink and swollen with the ocean of tears, both shed and withheld, since the angry wounded called her VC child, and desperate arms snatched her back to the jungle. Today I carry 1 stone at a time. With each dripping tear, I recite her name. Gently, I let her down off my back and give my lost niece this tomb for a home. 8 children tumble around my fractured legs to help me lay the last stones on her cairn. A single red dragonfly hovers in our wafting incense, and a sweet breeze kisses my cheek with her name. Bless you, Beth Marie. That was, we were told it was the second windy tomb ever built by Americans in Vietnam, and that practice has continued since then. So there are other windy tombs for Vietnamese who were lost, and also for American MIAs around Vietnam. And the Vietnamese respect them every bit as much as they respect the tombs of their own people. Okay, another reason they don't have the wound is animism, which teaches everything's alive. Everything, everything, everything. Everything is alive, everything has heart and soul, and it comes from the organizing power that directs the universe. You see one of our veterans holding a very severely disabled Agent Orange child. And we come together and we witness the wounds and we give support, and we all become one people. So, well, time's getting short. I'm going to skip some of the poems I had to read to you, but animism is another of the reasons that Vietnam is well. Okay, some other things we don't know or didn't know. Vietnam has a 2,000-year-old warrior tradition. They have been fighting and resisting larger, stronger, better equipped, financed, and armed invaders for 2,000 years. And there have always been people's wars. Everyone is engaged. There are always defensive wars. They're always concerned about trying to maintain their morality even when they have to fight and kill. They don't count victories and losses. They're not keeping a scorecard. They just want the war over. They accept the necessity of sacrifice and loss. When they march off to war, they know they might not come home, rather than I'm going to do everything I can to come home and just kill the other. Even Ho Chi Minh during the war told the Vietnamese people, try to take the Americans prisoners, not kill them, because the American GIs are also victims of this war, and they have families waiting for them at home. So all of this long established warrior tradition gave them moral and spiritual values, and the people kept their unity and their motivation and knew that those were not the big bombs, they didn't have them, but their moral and spiritual values and their unity were their most powerful weapons. And of course, that's also something we didn't have. Our moral and spiritual values did not lead us into that war, and our country was profoundly disunited about it. And we all caught that illness and broke apart from each other. And our veterans in Vietnam knew many of us were protesting the war, and so they didn't know that we were on their side wanting them home. So our unity was destroyed, our morality was destroyed, and the moral injury is in the core of PTSD. It's not something different, it's the soul wound in the core. But in Vietnam, no moral injury. They don't say we won the war. They don't brag about victories. They don't. They hate that so many people died and that they also had a kill. They say we reunified the country and we restored the peace. Those are noble and moral and spiritual ends. And if any country can learn to think about the horrors of war when it's necessary this way, that we're trying to reunify and restore peace, not trying to beat and destroy and conquer and dominate other people, we'd all be a lot better off. So you see a gathering that we had with their warriors. These warriors are actually from their Chinese border war that in 1979, which was the last time they were at war against the Chinese in 1979 when China invaded, and also against Cambodia when they went in and stopped the Khmer Rouge genocide and then gave the country back to Cambodia. They didn't want it, but the rest of the world didn't stop the Khmer Rouge. They finally did. So they have other war stories as well. This was the last war they've had. They've been at peace since 1979. And so Vietnam is rated presently as one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And I want to introduce you to Mr. Tiger. Again, some of you have met him. Oops. Okay. We spend much time with Mr. Tiger, and he really was a veteran of 25 years of combat. He was never in the military. He was Viet Minh and Viet Cong, which was like the Minutemen in America, local militia defending their home territory. But he was in combat for 25 years against the Japanese, the French, and the Americans. And he just died 2 years ago at 96. He was a happy, healthy, loving person. And when we met him, these were some of his lessons. He affirms they did not have PTSD. He pointed to his head and said, in America, you think of the wound is to the brain, but it's not, it's to the heart. When our warriors said, but don't you feel so guilty for surviving when so many of your own people died? He said, no, feel sorrow, but not survivor's guilt. Then he says, the bullet is the messenger of karma. Learn to see from the point of view of the bullet. I didn't shoot at you, you didn't shoot at me, we both shot, and somehow the universal laws decided who lived and who died. And then finally, well then, Mr. Tiger, how do we prevent PTSD? And he just chuckled and said, well, stay home. If somebody invades your country, you have to protect it and fight, but do not invade other countries. Do not let your government send your children overseas for the wrong reasons. So Mr. Tiger's teachings have been very, very important. And I want to share a poem I wrote after these lessons. It's called Point of View, and it's taken from his teaching, Learn to See from the Point of View of the Bullet. I use this poem a lot at our retreats and in healing work with our veterans. I think this is our vets' favorite poem of mine. So I'm just mentioning that because they find it really, really useful in letting go of their survivor's guilt and their self-condemnation and learning to see from the karmic point of view. So, point of view, here we go. From the point of view of the bullet, one will live, one will die. From the point of view of a man, my life is his death. From the point of view of the bullet, you took the right step, he the wrong. From the point of view of a man, his death should have been mine. From the point of view of the bullet, fate is a straight, swift shot. From the point of view of a man, fate is a fickle whore. From the point of view of the bullet, I am a servant of destiny. From the point of view of a man, destiny is a fickle whore. From the point of view of the bullet, his destiny was complete. From the point of view of a man, he left me to live for two. From the point of view of the bullet, you survived to finish your mission. From the point of view of a man, my time in hell was enough. From the point of view of the bullet, life wants more from you. From the point of view of a man, tell me what I must do. From the point of view of the bullet, live for all who died. From the point of view of a man, too many lamenting ghosts. From the point of view of the bullet, their voices are now your voice. From the point of view of a man, those voices are now my voice. All of the losses we've had become lives that go on in us and through us, and their voices become ours, and we end up representing their unlived lives. They do want us to live, not to collapse. And they do want us to have good lives and to make their deaths meaningful by how we live. We leave ourselves of survivor's guilt and carry the mission forward with appropriate grief and sorrow and utmost love and respect. Some more of the healing experiences. You see our brother Magoo there. This is in a school we built in the Mekong Delta. And when you're in combat, you don't want to be surrounded and overrun. And that's horrible when it happens. But when we're in Vietnam or in any place we conflicted and are surrounded by loving people, and especially beautiful, loving children, and it's good to be surrounded and overrun. And look at his face. He's been back with us 3 times, I think, and he's done much charity work over there. And now he works with warriors all around the world. And corrective experiences. Go back and be with the people and allow ourselves to experience what we became terrified of and give it its real meaning in peacetime. And we do extreme atonement practices. This is John. He's an Afghanistan veteran. And he went to Vietnam with us, actually to atone for his father. His father was a Vietnam veteran who had PTSD and sadly had taken some civilian lives and had wanted to go back himself to practice atonement and give healing to the Vietnamese. But tragically, the father died before he could ever go back. So John, our veteran, went back to Vietnam with a very generous financial gift from his family. And we found Vietnamese families who had elders the age his father would have been, who he might have harmed. And John provided the money that provided life-saving charity and medical treatment for them, and actually saved the lives of several people. So he gave that meaning to his father's service and his father's passing. And we also enter a universal brotherhood and sisterhood. You met both Mr. Tiger and Tom Tien, so you see their quotes. Mr. Tiger, why do you accept us here, Mr. Tiger? Oh, another vet just arrived who was back with us. Welcome, Art. Why do you accept us back, Mr. Tiger? Because we are all brothers and sisters who survived the same hell. And Tom Tien, from now on, Americans and Vietnamese veterans must be the lips and tongues of the same mouth telling the world the same story. We have become that, and we're working on that. Part of the reason this is so important is because here in America, we don't know the Vietnamese stories, but in Vietnam, they know our stories. Not only from our veterans going back, they've watched all our war movies. We haven't watched theirs. They sing all our songs from the 60s. Their college students practice their English by listening to music from the 60s that they love and learning the songs and then singing them to us. Some of us have been there together when their young people surrounded our veterans and sang in English, "Where have all the flowers gone?" to our crusty old vets. And then we all broke into hugs and tears. So the universal brotherhood and sisterhood of survivors and of people who have done these violent acts to each other, which creates the necessity to transform them into a loving intimacy that can last for the rest of our lives. Okay, there we are. And this is a quote from A Course on Miracles, and you can hear how it becomes true when we go to Vietnam. The holiest spot on earth is where an ancient hatred becomes a present love. You see one of our warriors, his name was Will, he was Native American. With these two men were NVA veterans. They actually fought each other at Dak To in the same battle. And we found each other in Hanoi. And look at the meeting. Look at what it means. I'm so glad we were bad shots so we could live this distant day to become beloved brothers. It means everything to meet the former foe and turn them into sister and brother and affirm that where we once met hating each other is a holy spot where we now love and help and support each other. And to demonstrate that, I'll read one last poem right now, and then we can do some talking. You will see her picture in a moment. Let me see. No, not yet. Okay, Kate and I have an adopted daughter named Yak in Vietnam, and this is a letter in the form of a poem that I wrote to her after we visited My Lai together. You all know about My Lai, the worst atrocity site of the Vietnam War. 501 civilians, innocent civilians slaughtered. So I've been there on many trips. Some of us have been there together, and Nyak and I have been there together as well. It was really painful. She had never been there before. So this was her first encounter with her people's atrocity experience. So this is my letter to her after visiting My Lai. You need to know one Vietnamese word, bo, which means father. Yesterday, we walked side by side and in hand through the petrified prints of the bare feet of fleeing mothers and children and the stomping combat boots of marauding GIs. We stood in the kitchen of ghosts. We hugged before the hats, shirts, canes of those who can no longer use them. I felt such shame. I could no longer feel worthy to be your father. But all you did was wipe my tears and call me Bo. That cane, that hat were worn by an old man who walked into your dreams last night. terror in his eyes, last prayers on his lips. He came with the one who married him forever. The GI you saw, beating, beating, beating his head, his arms, his face, his body. This morning, your own head screams with pain. His eyes are behind your eyes. This morning, my fingers try to squeeze your ache away, and I see his wounds, his blood, breaking through your gentle almond face. You cannot stand the pain of your grandfather or the long suffering of your country. I cannot stand the pain of my daughter or the endless shame of my nation. Side by side, hand in hand, we carry this pain together. Side by side, incense between our palms, we bow as one before the altar of the dead. So all these ways, through witnessing, through grieving, through sharing the wounds, through telling the stories, through atoning together, through having the courage to meet each other now in peace and embrace this way, we become one people. One people who share this very tortured story that brought us the potential for this extraordinary degree of intimacy. And so I'm just going to quote a Greek source right now. Euripides in the Trojan Women had, well, the wife of the slain warrior Hector said to the mother of the slain warrior Hector, "Do not grieve too much, mother. If it was not for the war, we never would have known him." And this is true here, and again and again. If it was not for the war, we never would have known Vietnam and the Vietnamese people, and they wouldn't have known us. Well, we need to not know each other that way, but this way. We can become one together through this work. And it heals the trauma. So this is my new book, Coming Home in Vietnam. It's on Amazon. You can get it from the publisher. You can get it from me. And you've heard some of the poems. It's full of poetry and an essay and stories of this kind. We also have a Mother Pig project in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. We have ongoing charity. You can get more information on these things at our website, mentorthesoul.guide. We have been restoring a really devastated village in the Central Highlands. We were going to buy them water buffalo, and they said, "Don't, please don't." Well, how about chickens? They reproduce easily and we can give you lots. No, don't. What do you need? We've been flooded. We've had bird flu. We've had SARS. We have the pandemic. And we have storms and typhoons. The only thing that survives through all of them are the pigs. They stay put. They like the mud. They reproduce. They're really smart. They're good pets. So we've been supplying mother pigs to this devastated village in the Central Highlands. We've given them 3 dozen so far. We're giving them another dozen next month. You can donate on our website. Please help. And this is a gift of love from our part of the world to that part of the world, and continues to build these beautiful healing relations. So the Vietnamese don't say the Americans are people who came and invaded our country. They're saying they're extraordinary, loving, kind people who help us rebuild. So with that, I guess I will go. How can I do this? I want to go back to our group. I'll tell you this quickly. You see Ron, who also told a story of soul lost in a firefight. Only he said it was the most important spiritual experiences of my life because it taught me I have a soul. I didn't know there was such a thing until it left my body and watched the firefight. And after the fight slowly came down out of the palm trees and back into me. So I really experienced soul loss in a firefight and then soul restoration afterwards. And so he's been meditating and praying his whole life. He went back to Vietnam with us. The woman you see hugging him, her Her little hut was on the edge of the old battlefield where Ron fought. Her brother was killed in that firefight. Ron cried and apologized to her, and she hugged him and said, no, no, no. There's nothing to apologize for. You were a good warrior doing what you had to do. Thank you for coming back and sharing my grief with me. So we grieved her lost brother. She elected Ron to be her new brother, and Ron raised the money with other veterans and with us to turn her tiny hut into a good little house. She now has a kitchen and a bedroom in a simple house and a living quarters and electricity, where she had none of that before. And so gifts came to her that she never, ever thought would be possible in this lifetime or ever, in the reconciliation work we do after war. So there's extraordinary how many gifts and blessings can come from this work. Here's my contact information, my books, my email, and my phone for any of you who need it. But write quickly if you need it, or contact me or Gloria, because I ain't staying here. We're going back into our group. My last slide. That's my daughter, Kate's daughter, Nyok, with our brother Tommy, who went back with us also. And you've seen what Nyok says. Please keep bringing your veterans back so I can heal them with my love. And the closing prayer from Buddha: hatreds never cease by hatreds in this world. By love they cease. This is an ancient law. And I'm stopping sharing. We'll go to the gallery. This is the ancient law that we all share together. Hatreds only cease by love. Healing only happens by love, in spirituality and in community. And I could share all night, but we don't have the time. So welcome back to our big group. And we have some time for questions, comments, sharing from any of you.
Beautiful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gloria.
Okay, there's a something in the chat from Colleen saying, so sorry, dear new friends. I have to call my sister back as mom needs us. Okay, and you answered. Okay, and thank you for the wonderful presentation from, I'm not sure, it just says iPhone. So I don't know who that is.
Do we have any questions or comments or sharing from anybody? Some of you have been back. Some of you have done this healing and atonement and charity work over there. You might want to testify to our group of what it did for you. Beth Marie, you've done. Art and his family built several compassion houses in Vietnam, right where he served outside of Da Nang. Lawrence has been back and doing the healing work there. Anything, questions, comments, stories, or I'll talk some more.
Beth Marie has a question, I believe.
You're on mute, Beth Marie.
Okay.
Good.
I'm trying to fix supper too. It was changing my life, because I was a broken reed in the wind. And being back in Vietnam, I love Vietnam. I mean, I've been back 10 times. I took groups back to do cross-cultural education, and I would love to go back, and I'm not sure I'll ever get there again, but I'm still trying. I'm still trying. And my relationship in Vietnam is a wonderful, beautiful culture, especially the people. I mean, people really touched my heart while I was there. And when I was there with Ed, but when I was going back and we'd go to repeated places, and I became friends. I became part of families. So what Ed's doing is so important, and it does heal the soul. And I think I've had a whole bunch of health problems, and I think it's having my soul healed is what helped me get through some of that.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Beth Marie, and I hope you like the poem. We have to get you the book, but I hope you like the poem. A couple of quickly. The soul is the center of our being and the center of our healing. And our modern medical and mental health systems don't pay. Soul doesn't exist to them. Our medical system treats the body, and mostly the mental health system treats psychology, but psyche means soul, but they're not. They're doing our psychodynamics, mostly left over from our childhood and our stressors. Ancient wisdom from all over the world, including our core, where medicine and psychology came from, was soul medicine. And the ancient and spiritual wisdom all teach that our health proceeds from our soul. And if we take care of our souls, as Beth Marie said, our bodies may still be afflicted, but the healing occurs from deep inside, from our souls outward, and can get our bodies and our minds through really difficult things. So thank you, Beth Marie. Let's see, Art, you were next, and then Manny.
Yeah, Art Myers, and that was just an unbelievable journey that we took. I want to say hello to Beth Marie. I'm glad to see she's well. One of the things that that really got to me, and that I passed on to my men's group here, was the ceremony that we had above Chudai, where the first battle was fought, and we did thing, and I brought it to my men's group, and they just loved it. So, I've talked to many veterans that and talked about going back. I gave them your name and address, but I don't know who has or who hasn't, but some of them were really hurting, probably like I was when I went. And thanks, Ed, and thanks for your benefit there. You give it to all of us. So thank you.
You're so welcome, Art. And thank you for continuing to spread the word and teach it to the others. What we bring back, we don't only teach to veterans. Art taught it to his whole men's group. We all need these kinds of sacred and communal ceremonies to be well and to live well in community, whether it's about war healing or any other form of bringing us together. So your words are good and wise. Thanks, Art. Manny, you were next.
You need to mute.
Just muted myself. Thank you. I was going to say I love your presentation, but then again, that's the same thing I would say about all the presentations that I've heard, Dr. Ed. So thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question and a sharing, and so Dr. Ed, I'll ask the question, and while you give it some thought, I'll do the sharing. Going back to Soldier's Heart, the meaning and the root of Soldier's Heart, and now leaping forward to high tech, high touch, where we are today. How do we, together as a community, bridge the gap between Soldier's Heart at the root level and where we are today with high tech, like heart math research? The organization has been around for 30 years or so. So that's the question I want to leave in the air. And I also want to share, in addition to the flags, I'm going to make the assumption that we don't know what that symbol represents. It's just a generic assumption. Some of you may know, but whole health for the veterans, whole health. It's instead of using the word holistic, because holistic has a lot of woo-woo connotations, we call it whole health. So it's there's all these spheres and all these concentric circles. So basically, it's like 12 o'clock is working your body, 1 o'clock is surroundings, 3 o'clock is personal development, 4 o'clock is food and drink, 6 o'clock is recharge, then family, friends, and coworkers, in other words, relationships. 9 o'clock is spirit and soul, growing and connecting, and 11 o'clock is power of the mind. So this is all part of the VA cultural transformation, the Center for Cultural Transformation. So it's something it's hard for us to implement, to go from the sick care model to the healthcare, to the real whole healthcare. So it's an individual transformation, and I'm a big advocate for the collective transformation. So thank you, Dr. Ed. And if anyone has any questions, the website is va.gov/whole health. va.gov/whole health. Please share this with all your friends or veterans. We need to spread this fire from a 360-degree perspective.
Maybe put your link in the chat.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Anybody else?
The question about heart math or heart center?
Yeah, there was
you wanted to
an
ask
impossible question that our friend Manny gave me. Thank you. Oh, goodness. All right. So how do we go from soldier's heart to heart math? How do we go from the ancient ways to all of our the gifts and the challenges that our modern ways bring us? So first, were you asking to share what soldier's heart means, what the story?
I want to clarify. It's not that broad of a. It's more like heart math. For those of us that don't know, it's about heart rate variability. We have the software to do this work with veterans. Just like EMDR, eye movement desensitization, it helps the veteran not have to tell the story over. They just think it, feel it, and process or reprocess. This is very similar, but it's instead of thinking through or dealing with memories, it's more about feedback, biofeedback, and sensing or seeing how your heart is in a place of peace. So that is, how do we translate or transport the ancient knowledge to this new high-tech approach in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of this crisis-oriented world where we're socially programmed or conditioned to just focus on problems, diseases, pathologies, and putting out fires? Because this is totally proactive. This is more like, this is for those people that are like, I can't meditate. I don't know how to meditate. It's too hard for me. Well, this is like an active form of meditation that's giving you constant feedback based on your heart rate variability.
Okay, I will try to do a clumsy job with that very complex question and concern, because it's a huge question and concern that transcends just the veteran field, of course, and it's about trauma all over the world and our advances in technology and our healthcare system, and how do we put all of this together? So the first thing I will say is that our modern technological and scientific advances are understanding the brain and the central nervous system and the way the body works, and using so much technology to be more in tune with it. These are both great advances that can put us more in touch with ourselves if we use them carefully and correctly, and also their reliance on technology and on mechanics and on machines and on staying in the present, which is, my view is that it's partly good and partly dangerous, because it's cutting us off from relationships like this, from people doing things with and for each other, and the what we call PTSD is in part broken brain and damaged or transformed and distorted central nervous system, but in part, we need to work directly with the heart. I wasn't able to show it to you, but I was going to show you a video with one of our veterans having an extreme catharsis in Vietnam. But that was without equipment. It was on his old battlefield and surrounded by our group and Vietnamese people. And the grief and pain that he released was 40 years old, and it was as deep as a volcano. But we were able to access it and release it and give him a complete catharsis and transformation without technology. So the technology helps, and it has to be integrated with our relational practices and with our spiritual practices and our cultural practices, so that we are, as you rightly say, Manny, we're treating whole health, the whole person, body, mind, heart, spirit, community. We have to include them all. And with all due respect to our practitioners who are using these techniques, some of them leave out the rest of our humanity. Some of them rely too much on the technology. I was at a conference where one of the psychologist for veterans was giving a presentation on exposure therapy. And in the middle of it, a veteran in the audience jumped up screaming, raising his fists, and he screamed, I'd better love the hell out of you, and you better love and trust the hell out of me before you ever put me through that kind of crazy shit. If we have a relationship first, and I trust you to take me back to the war zone, then maybe we can do it. But if you put me on your machines and just show me pictures, that's going to traumatize me even worse. So it's not that it's bad, it's that how we do it and how we use our technology, and whether we really integrate it with good human relations and with calling on the rest of our being and abilities. How we do that now during the world crisis, that's a bigger question. One way is this way.
Yes.
One way is this way. Some of our brothers and I are working with people in Ukraine this way. We're talking, we're meeting, we're sharing stories, we're grieving together, we're sharing the wisdom that we've gained. We don't have machines, we don't have technology, can't even be in the same continent, but we can work together when we realize we're all one and it's all of our story. So,
well, this technology that we're using right now is part of the solution, right?
Mm-hmm. What would have happened to all of us with the pandemic, but without this technology to be connected?
Right, exactly.
So, yes. Right.
We're just about out of time, but I see Lawrence has a question. So if it's not too long a question, we can go ahead. Lawrence.
It's actually a comment just along what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
Ed, Ed, we did this. I went to original in-person Warriors Return ceremony 6 years ago with Ed, and then we did one during the pandemic with military on Zoom. It was a 3-day workshop, breakout sessions, meditation, singing, storytelling. We did the whole thing, and it was amazing through Zoom, and it worked. It was great. So yeah, I think this technology can really do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we use the technology in this human way, we overcome the feeling that we're on machines, and we get to be with each other this way. So thank you, Lawrence.
Well, thank you so much, Ed. This has been a beautiful and very heart-opening presentation. I learned a lot about this subject, and I will learn more as I finish your book, which I'm not quite halfway through. So thank you so much, and thank you all for attending, and thank you all for your comments. And hopefully we'll see you again in January or February, sometime in the winter when you're new book comes out.
Great. I look forward to
Okay.
that. Thank you so much, Gloria, for hosting this. Thank you all for attending. Thanks for the reunion. This has been really good for my heart also. And for realizing together, I mean, the relationships here stretch well back to the wars. So we're together. We've been together in this work and on this path for decades. So, and this affirms it, and your work, Gloria, affirms it as we bring love and compassion together into our world. So thank you and bless you all. And stay connected. Great to see you.